Lanterns are lit. Their soft light trembles against the background of a cool October evening. Outside, the wind is stirring the last autumn leaves, rustling them loudly on the ground like dry bones in the dark. Halloween, and although more than a century has passed since then, today we turn our gaze to the past. We are not in the world of costumes and sweets that you might know. We are in 1890, where the shadows stretch long, where the traditions of the old country still cling tenaciously, and where the very air seems to be filled with mystery. So make yourself comfortable, pull your blanket closer, and let your mind rest in the silence of this moment. Because in the story you're about to hear, we're going to go on a Halloween night unlike any you've ever known. The lamps are dimmed, the hearth is glowing, and the voices of the past are ready to speak again. And before we begin this journey, if you enjoy these lantern-lit wanderings through history, I invite you to subscribe to Holiday History. Every week, we bring to life the forgotten tales of the holidays of bygone days. Together, we create a space where time softens, where stories regain their breath, and where you can close your eyes and be transported to other centuries. Now, let's get ready for 1890. The year rests at the junction of two worlds. The modern era is approaching. Electric lights are starting to flicker in the great cities. Bicycles rattle over the cobblestones. Newspapers are spreading stories faster than ever before, and yet the old world still clings tenaciously. Families bask by the cool fires, reading fairy tales by lamplight. Horse-drawn carriages fill the roads. Villages freeze in silence under the autumn moon, almost the same as they did centuries ago. It is a time of transition, caught between tradition and change. On Halloween, this feeling of peace between the worlds is strongest. For this night, for the people of 1890, is not just for fun. It's a night made up of whispering spirits, playing games with fate, intertwining laughter and anxiety. In the living room, young women will peel apples and throw the peel over their shoulders, hoping that the shape it will fall into will form the name of their future husband. In the kitchen, nuts will be roasted in the fire, and their crackling, as they say, will reveal whether love will last or fade away. Outside, boys will wander the streets with lanterns carved not from pumpkins, but from wrap, tearing gates off their hinges and inciting each other to pranks that balance on the edge of mischief and threat. But we won't rush it. Tonight is not about hastily jumping from one image to another. This evening is about lingering in the glow, letting the world of the past come alive with every breath. Every sound, every sight, every taste and smell will take us deeper into the heart of this Halloween night. The story that you are about to hear is not one single story, but an interweaving of many threads. The laughter of children in the narrow streets, the muted tones of ghost stories told by the fire, the aroma of cider and baked apples, the creak of boots on cobblestones. You will be there among them as if you stepped through a door in time, so close your eyes if you want to. Let the noise of the present die down. The year is 1890. The night is the eve of All Saints' Day. Lanterns flutter in the wind. The hearths are warm, and the veil between the worlds seems thinner than ever. Now, let's get started. The year is 1890, and October is almost at an end. The last traces of twilight disappeared from the sky, leaving only a thin silver glow clinging to the horizon. The air is cool and sharp, with a slight sharpness of smoke from chimneys. When you go outside with a lantern in your hand, its light blooms in a small circle in front of you. While the rest of the world retreats into the shadows, the night holds its breath, waiting. The cobblestones underfoot glisten from the day's dampness. Each stone catches the wavering light of the gas lanterns lining the road. These lanterns burn unevenly. They crackle and hiss, creating small halos of golden light that quickly melt into the darkness. The result is a patchwork of light and darkness. One moment the path is clear, the next it disappears into the shadows. Even the brick walls of nearby shops and houses seem alive, swelling and contracting as flames flicker inside the glass globes. The measured sound of hooves can be heard from the main street. The horse pulls the cart at a leisurely trot, its driver hunched over in a heavy coat, collar turned up against the cold. It is followed by the rhythmic chime of wheels, the iron rims grinding faintly against the stone. A gust of wind lifts the edge of the passenger's curtain, revealing a pale face in the lamplight before the fabric falls back into place. The noise recedes, leaving the street again in its muted silence. Shutters are closing on the sidewalks. The shops finish their day's work by locking the doors and sweeping the thresholds before going indoors. The clang of a key, the creak of a wooden sign swinging in the wind, the barking of a dog in the distance. Each sound is sharp. It carries further in the cool air. The city has not yet fallen asleep, but its tone has changed. If the day is filled with noise and bustle, then the night of October 31st feels charged, as if every ordinary sound is honed by the expectation of the season. And yet, not all the voices belong to adults finishing their day. A group of boys are sneaking down a narrow alley, agile and full of restless energy. They carry crude lanterns hollowed out of turnips, each with a jagged face carved out. The candlelight inside shines through the rough cuts, making the grimaces ugly, almost alive. Their laughter soars, then subsides as they shush each other. The gates creak in protest when they are taken off their hinges. A rope is stretched across the footpath at knee height, invisible in the twilight. Pranks are good, not cruel, but daring, designed to test courage and cause a stir. The night belongs to them no less than to the families gathered safely at home. However, if you leave the city, Halloween takes on a different character. In rural areas, there are fewer streetlights, roads are unpaved, and houses are far apart. It's dark here. Corn stalks, cut low after harvesting, stand brittle and pale under the moon. An owl screams from the rafters of a barn, its wings making a sound like cloth, suddenly torn in silence. The cry of a fox rushes over the open fields, sad and harsh. Without lanterns to soften the shadows, the stars overhead burn brighter, the constellations sparkle coldly over the blackened earth. For rural families, the night is more solemn. Superstitions seem closer. They are whispered in kitchens and by the hearths. A shutter slammed in the wind, the rustle of dry leaves against the door, even the squeak of a mouse in the barn. Everything becomes a signal that the unseen may be approaching. Some build small bonfires outside, a relic of old rituals. Their light is believed to ward off restless spirits. Others hang mountain ash branches or sprinkle salt on the doorsteps. The countryside, without the protection of bright lanterns or bustling neighbors, feels closer to the world of omens. And yet, whether it's the gas-lit city streets or the silent alleys of the countryside, the essence of Halloween in 1890 is the same, the threshold between the mundane and the otherworldly. This is not yet a celebration of sugar and costumes, but it is no longer the gloomy seriousness of a century ago with its fire and ashes. It's a night teetering precariously between mischief and awe. Think about the people themselves. Women rush home, their wool and cotton skirts covering the wet stones. The dresses are long, with bodices buttoned up to the throat, and the sleeves are slightly buffered on the shoulders in the latest fashion. Raincoats or shawls protect you from the cold. Men pass by in dark coats and bowler hats. Collars are starched. Shoes are polished, although they are already wet from the evening haze. Children traipse behind them, some wearing masks made of thick paper or stitched fabric, more like a disguise than an ornament. Anonymity excites them, because on this one night they can be mistaken for fairies or ghosts. In one of the townhouses along the street, the windows glow with warmth. The lace curtains are pulled back just enough to reveal the amber glow of the lamp. Silhouettes move inside. The hostess sets up chairs. The guests take off their coats. The children rush past with quick laughter on their lips. When the door opens briefly, the faint humming of a piano can be heard, and with it the smell of baked apples and nutmeg. That living room has its own Halloween spirit. Games, laughter, fortune-telling, and stories whispered around the fire. But we're not going in now, not yet. Stay outside for a moment longer. Listen to the creaking of the wagon wheels fading away, the muffled sound of boots on wet stone, the leaves rustling like a whisper as they are carried along the ground. At this moment, you are standing at the crossroads of time. Behind you lies the old world of superstitions, bonfires and spells passed down from generation to generation. Ahead lies the modern age, promising electric lights, organized parties, and ultimately candy, filled celebrations that will define Halloween in the future. However, tonight belongs entirely to 1890. It's half familiar, half forgotten. It's a night full of deception, expectation, and shadows that seem a little deeper than usual. Raise the lantern higher. The street ahead is darkening, but in the distance the house is shining brightly, a lighthouse against the autumn cold. The faint sound of laughter comes from his windows. Inside, fortune-telling, games will be played, and ghost stories will excite the imagination. That's where we'll go next. The door opens with a slight effort, and warmth spreads through the threshold. The light of the lamp curls into the hallway like liquid gold, carrying with it the smells of cloves, a scorched wick, and something sweet, maybe baked apples or a glazed pie cooling on a wire rack. The hostess greets you with a quiet, welcoming smile and a soft, "Good evening." Her voice is muffled, as if the air itself prefers silence. Your lantern is placed on a small table by the door, and you enter the house, where the sharpness of the night is dulled by the radiance and music. The hallway is narrow and tidy. Woolen coats hang on hangers, some slightly soaked from the afternoon haze. Below them is a porcelain umbrella stand, painted with blue swallows and creeping ivy. Behind the glass above the door, the living room opens with a stream of patterns and textures, embossed wallpaper in a rich wine shade, gilded frames catching sparks of light, and a carpet of roses woven so thickly that they look almost plush enough to pluck. A fire crackles in the fireplace, its tiles glisten. From time to time, an ember crackles, and the room sighs. The fire, the lamp, the faces, the shadows, everything moves in one slow rhythm. The guests have already gathered. Young men in highly polished vests, trousers with a clear hand, watch chains glistening under the lamp, young women in dresses made of wool or silk, with a high collar but artfully trimmed with lace or a brooch with a ribbon. The sleeves are fuller on the shoulder, according to the latest style. The cheeks, reddened from the cold, warmed up to a calm blush. Gloves are tucked into pockets or discreetly tucked into reticules. It's not a formal ball, but the care of appearance is evident in every polished shoe and neat cuff. On the sideboard by the window is a still life created for the evening. Dishes with apples, pussets, Baldwins, greenies. Each variety is stacked in its own bowl. A plate filled with ginger biscuits, a glass compote bowl filled with walnuts and hazelnuts, a small jug with cream, a decanter with spicy cider in which lemon slices float pressed against the glass. The owner inserted sprigs of dried tansy and wheat into the composition. Simple autumn symbols that make the table festive without being flashy. No paper clippings or rubber bats. The Victorian taste tends towards hints. The season enters into the scent of nutmeg and the crackling of the hearth, into the turnip lantern modestly placed at the edge of the mantelpiece, with its pinching face and wavering smile. There's a piano against the far wall. His keys have just been wiped, and a young man in round glasses is flexing his fingers with a short exercise. When the conversation subsides, he switches to a waltz, popular at assemblies, something light that matches the scale of the room. The cousin quietly sings along. The other one beats time with his shoes, careful not to scratch the polished floorboards. Music is not so much a performance as a quiet thread-stitching conversation and laughter together. The conversation flows through safe channels, at least to begin with. A new book from the library, the price of coal. There are rumors that electric lighting will be tested on one of the streets in the city center. Someone mentions bicycles, how fast the riders are rushing. And the great-aunt, shocked, declares that young ladies will ruin their spines with such contraptions. There is a chorus of polite objections, and everyone smiles. They sip cider, argue politely, and pass cookies. On the mantelpiece, the clock ticks with a pleasant regularity. Tick-tock, tick-tock. And there's a folded newspaper next to it. If it had been unfolded, it would have shown the usual autumn ads. Harvest, church evenings, a column in which naughty teenagers are scolded for last year's antics. But no one reads it. Tonight is an evening for conversation, warmth, and the unhurried unfolding of rituals. The lamps have been adjusted, and the glass shades are shining like moons. The lace curtains under the heavy drapes are drawn just enough so that the street light becomes blurred, not dazzling. There is a tall screen in the corner embroidered with willow branches, and behind her, close enough to catch the heat, the cat took the best place on the carpet, yawning from time to time, indifferent to the holiday. The hostess claps her hands softly, more a signal than an order. "Shall we start?" she asks, and the living room lights up with spirit, if not light. A few games to celebrate the season, and then a story or two. Heads nod, fans snap. The piano lid comes down with a soft click. The conversation gathers its skirts and sits down politely. They bring a basin. A wide ceramic bowl with a thin border of ivy is placed on a low table covered with a white tablecloth. They pour fresh water from the kitchen into it. It catches the light of the lamp and shivers. Then the apples are sent there too, red, green, and speckled. A small fleet of boats bobbing towards each other. A murmur rises. Not all households approve of this. Some people call it inelegant, but in the spirit of the evening, this living room allows for a little splash. A cousin from the other side of town gets called first, tucks a napkin into her collar, and kneeling, smiles, trying to hold back a smile. The room tilts with her. She dives, misses, and comes up laughing, her breath spraying droplets like beads. On the second attempt, she presses the Baldwin to the edge of the bowl and pulls it out. The teeth are triumphant, the curls are wet, the applause is polite but sincere. She is followed by a friend, then another one. Each return is greeted with such cheers that seem much louder indoors. When the young man approaches, the cheers are replaced by a light competitive mood. He resolutely dives in, comes up with nothing, shakes his head like a wet retriever, and finally wins a crisp green prize amid smiles from all sides. A towel is handed over. The practical hostess puts down a second bowl to rinse her hands and passes more cookies to soak up the taste of the water. When the basin is taken away, there is another entertainment. Snap apple. The cord is stretched from the door to the hook by the fireplace. An apple is hanging on it, impaled on a small fork, gently swinging. And behind him, a little further away, there is a short candle that has just been lit. The pale flame sways as the apple sways. The task is simple to describe and fiendishly difficult to perform. Take a bite without hitting the wax. A cue is forming. The apple twitches. The heat of the candle drives away the nose. Laughter breaks out every time someone makes a mistake in their calculations and retreats with a startled sigh. When the gentleman finally manages to take a decent bite, the room recognizes his victory with the quick, shining pride reserved for games that don't really need to be won. The aroma of apple pulp and the light smell of lard pleasantly mix in the air. Then the hostess opens a small tin box and sprinkles a handful of nuts on a brass shovel which is held over the fire. They bounce like live bugs under the influence of heat, rattling and spinning. It's not the time for fortune-telling yet. They're saved for later, when the room gets quieter. But even without predictions, a small sight pleases. The chatter subsides, eyes are glued to the shovel, and tiny pops punctuate the steady ticking of the clock. When the nuts are browned and release their warm, buttery flavor, they are poured into a bowl and passed with a pinch of salt. My fingertips are shiny. The napkins are fluttering. The sleeve gets wet imperceptibly. The piano resumes playing for a moment. No ostentatious passages, just a sweet melody that leaves room for 10 voices to quietly sing along. People do it quietly. Humming permeates the space between the lamp and the fire as the cat blinks and settles back down. The gentleman, modestly skilled in salon magic, pulls a coin from his cuff and a paper flower from behind the child's ear to appreciative sighs. Nothing scary. The mood tends towards mild amazement, as if the house itself prefers wonders that soothe rather than disturb. And yet, it's Halloween. In a lull, the owner goes to the fireplace and lowers the turnip lantern on the table. Up close, his face looks rustic. His eyes were cut out with a penknife. His teeth are uneven, and the candle inside burned the walls to transparency. He doesn't announce anything. He just puts it next to the cider jug, and the room absorbs the reminder. There are pranks going on outside. Enchantments might find this room later. In the meantime, they stick to the softer side of mischief. When the basin is taken away, there is another entertainment. Snap apple. The cord is stretched from the door to the hook by the fireplace. An apple is hanging on it, impaled on a small fork, gently swinging. And behind him, a little further away, there is a short candle that has just been lit. The pale flame sways as the apple sways. The task is simple to describe and fiendishly difficult to perform. Take a bite without hitting the wax. A cue is forming. The apple twitches. The heat of the candle drives away the nose. Laughter breaks out every time someone makes a mistake in their calculations and retreats with a startled sigh. When the gentleman finally manages to take a decent bite, the room recognizes his victory with the quick, shining pride reserved for games that don't really need to be won. The aroma of apple pulp and the light smell of lard pleasantly mix in the air. Then the hostess opens a small tin box and sprinkles a handful of nuts on a brass shovel, which is held over the fire. They bounce like live bugs under the influence of heat, rattling and spinning. It's not the time for fortune-telling yet. They're saved for later, when the room gets quieter. But even without predictions, a small sight pleases. The chatter subsides, eyes are glued to the shovel, and tiny pops punctuate the steady ticking of the clock. When the nuts are browned and release their warm, buttery flavor, they are poured into a bowl and passed with a pinch of salt. My fingertips are shiny. The napkins are fluttering. The sleeve gets wet imperceptibly. The piano resumes playing for a moment. No ostentatious passages, just a sweet melody that leaves room for 10 voices to quietly sing along. People do it quietly. Humming permeates the space between the lamp and the fire as the cat blinks and settles back down. The gentleman, modestly skilled in salon magic, pulls a coin from his cuff and a paper flower from behind the child's ear to appreciative sighs. Nothing scary. The mood tends towards mild amazement, as if the house itself prefers wonders that soothe rather than disturb. And yet, it's Halloween. In a lull, the owner goes to the fireplace and lowers the turnip lantern on the table. Up close, his face looks rustic. His eyes were cut out with a penknife. His teeth are uneven, and the candle inside burned the walls to transparency. He doesn't announce anything. He just puts it next to the cider jug, and the room absorbs the reminder. There are pranks going on outside. Enchantments might find this room later. In the meantime, they stick to the softer side of mischief. A spool of thread for a blindfold, a saucer with a ring hidden under a folded napkin, a handful of keys placed noiselessly on a plate, small preparations for the next game. And with that, the living room becomes a stage for quieter magic. Her light is turned inward. Her society is ready. The laughter games are over. The hour of fate's whispers has come. The living room quieted down the way it does when those gathered finally agree without words to listen to something fragile. The arms are folded. The glasses are placed on saucers. What's left of the cider releases faint curls of steam that float away to the ceiling sockets and disappear. Someone is moving coal with a poker. The reflection becomes deeper, casting thin braids of light along the fireplace grate. The time has come. Time for quieter games in the evening. The ones who pretend to look ahead and yet tell you mostly what you already want to hear. The host places one tallow candle in the center of the table and covers the flame with his palm until it settles. Next to it, he puts a small oval mirror, the kind a lady might keep in a drawer of a dressing table. Its silver-plated surface captures the room in miniature, dimmed lamps, curtains, attentive and slightly intrigued faces. The hostess lays out a small plate. a peeling knife, and a handful of hard apples. Their skins are covered with specks of red and olive color. A rustle of anticipation runs through the circle. Even those who don't believe want to watch. "First," says the hostess, "the peel." She turns to a shy girl in a dove-winged dress. The cousin who had earlier fished the Baldwin out of the basin with a triumphant bite. The girl's hands are without gloves, and she holds them up to the candle as if trying to warm up some courage in herself. A firm hand, the hostess gently advises, to take it off completely without tearing it. The knife meets the apple with a careful whisper. The peel comes off with a ribbon as thin as a ribbon can be, curling below the girl's wrist. She's not in a hurry. Her friends lean forward, one with her fingers pressed to her lips. The other pretends that she doesn't care, but she can't. The knife moves in a circle until the apple becomes pale and neat. The strip of skin hangs down like a scarlet snake. "Now," says the hostess, "over your left shoulder." The girl turns around, picks up the peel and throws it behind her back. She falls with a gentle slap and writhes crookedly. A little fuss ensues as three young men lean over her from different angles, each seeing their own letter. "This is S," one announces. "Ah," says another, "it's J." The host, acting as a judge, tilts his head. "Brave G," he finally proclaims, and ripples of laughter light up the room. Somewhere, a young man with a suitable initial undeservedly acquires a modest legend. Then another volunteer is called, then another. One peel falls in the form of an 8 and is interpreted as a B after lively debuts. The other falls in the form of a clear C, neat as handwriting. There are groans, blushes, and a furtive glance at the piano stool, where a gentleman is diligently studying the keys. When one patient soul's peel breaks halfway and falls on the carpet in two unromantic lumps, the room applauds anyway. "Two fans," someone jokes, and good humor prevails. This is followed by a test with nuts. The owner puts two hazelnuts side by side on the mantelpiece. "Name them," he says. The girl whispers Eleanor to one, Thomas to the other, then steps back, as if preparing for a small verdict. A poker is brought to the nuts. The nuts heat up and twitch, then someone hopes that they will bounce together, but Eleanor neatly tumbles. The Thomas trembles in place, then bursts with a soft, decisive pop. The reaction is theatrical despair and real relief, skillfully mixed. "The heart is a rebellious organ," says the owner with mock solemnity. "Try again with more suitable candidates." Laughter follows, but even those who laugh look down, secretly comparing memorized names with furtively exchanged glances in the room. The hostess does not allow the pace to accelerate. The living room requires a rhythm, a burst of laughter, a puddle of silence, a new curiosity, unfolded. She brings a modest cupcake, a dense lamb with cinnamon, and with a conspiratorial smile shows there are surprises hidden inside. A ring, a button, a bean, a tiny wishbone wrapped in paper. "Slices of destiny," she says, and begins to slice. The first piece goes to the child at the screen, who finds only a cupcake and looks very relieved. The second slice produces a button. "Hard work," says the owner, and the recipient promises to finish a certain embroidery pattern before the snow. The gentleman gets the bean and raises it like a scepter. "The king for an hour," someone exclaims, and for the next 60 minutes he will be required to rule in matters of toasts and choosing the next entertainment. The ring has not been found yet, and its absence becomes its own expectation. During all this, the mirror waits. slightly tilted so that it reflects the candle in a narrow corridor of light. No one mentions him, and this silence gives him strength. When the plates with the cupcake are removed and the saucers are set out for tea, the hostess finally turns to him. "Some of you," she says, "have heard that the face you are destined to know can be seen in glass. If you're brave enough and lonely." A wave of delighted nervous trepidation runs through the company. There are rules. You should be alone. That's how you should hold the candle. And she adds with a condescending smile in the direction of the ant, "And you should come up without laughing." She chooses a couple of cousins to be marshals. They lead the volunteers into a small back hallway, where a tall mirror hangs in front of a sideboard littered with winter coats.